All right. So I'm going to repeat it again, just so we can capture it because it was just so perfect. And Anastasia, you said it just so eloquently. Do you mind saying it again? What do we need to do if we can't take a test?
I said we could let you know on Remind or like give you an email.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So that's advocating for yourself. You're speaking up for yourself by saying, hey, I have this family situation. Muhammad, you said you were busy too, right? So all you had to do was say it ahead of time so that I know, and I'll write myself a little note. Anastasia, Evelyn, Muhammad, they're dealing with family stuff or doctor's appointments or other items, and that's okay. But I don't know, so I don't know how to respond. So it's about our advocating for ourselves as learners. You all are in 9th and 10th grade, and that is an expectation. Okay. I have another one. It looks like I missed a couple of days and I just really didn't know what to do. So that's a really good point. So I want to show you guys something here. All righty. So if you look at our modules, if you go to the modules page, you'll see all of our modules. And so we were talking about archetypal criticism last week, and I think specifically maybe Thursday's lesson. So what I started doing last week is recording the lessons and actually just adding them to the class pages. All right. I made a huge mess. It was really confusing earlier in the week, and I think I sent you all an email announcement through your announcements. And I said, hey, today's recorded lesson is here in announcements. Here's our recorded lesson from yesterday. So it's there. But then by Thursday, I got a little wiser, right? And I decided to actually add it to the class page. So here's another thing that you all are responsible for. If you aren't able to make a class session, you all take the initiative to go back and look at the lesson. The information is still yours to absorb, and it's still your responsibility to get that information, okay? I hope that makes sense. That is an expectation for learning. You can't just skip out on it because you were absent. You just take the initiative, you go and do it, and you then submit your work to make sure you don't fall behind. Okay. And then I have a couple of others that say that I didn't understand the writing or I was confused. Will one of you please, let's go back to our page for Friday. And things do get confusing. So what should we do when we're confused, especially if we're taking a test? Alyssa, do you mind coming onto the mic and let's just give an example of a process that we should take from here on out when we are confused? What do we need to do?
Go back and look at the notes that we took.
Oh, heck yeah. That's some initiative right there. We could certainly go back and look at our notes. But sometimes our notes may be in different places. Sometimes our notes may not be as organized as we'd hope. What we have to do is just speak up, because your teachers don't know unless you say something. And that is the honest truth. We are not clairvoyants who know what you're thinking at all times. And so it's really helpful if you do what you all just did a minute ago. Send a message in a chat box, send a message on Remind, send an email, or simply come onto the mic and say, hey, I don't get it. That doesn't make any sense to me. So you are not taking that particular written response anymore. Like I said, it's closed. You all have something that I created over the weekend as a makeup. However, I want to review the module from Thursday because I think Thursday was a really helpful day for us, and I just want to talk about it again. Will you all take a minute and in the chat box, tell me your definition of an archetype? That was our key word for last week, and it was a new one for us. So please take a minute, think on it. How would you define archetype? Think maybe 3 words or less, okay? So use the chat box, please. I'm gonna stop share for a moment so that I can read your chat boxes real clearly in your own words. And so I'll type it in the chat box so you can see my question. And Oh, if I can type today. Your own words, define archetype. Thank you, beautiful, for turning on your camera. All right, so in your own words, define archetype. You could just put it right there in the chat box. It should not be a dictionary definition. I want you to tell me your own definition. Again, you can send it to me through private, or you can send it to me through the whole class. Take about 30 seconds, okay? Thank you, Ismael. It's Lana, Anastasia, Giovanna, Janahira, Malandi, Evelyn, Salat. What this is a cleanup time, right? So it doesn't have to be perfect, but what it does need is an attempt, you guys. That's what we want to get at. I think some of us are afraid to take a risk because we don't want to get it wrong. But hey, that's the only way we learn and we grow, right? Mistakes are proof that you're learning. I'll tell you guys this. I failed my road test the first time I took my driver's test. I didn't know how to parallel park. So I failed that road test and it sucked. But guess what? That's the only way that I could get my driver's license is to then go back, learn how to parallel park, and pass the parallel parking portion of the road test so that I can become a driver. Try to apply that to what you're doing right now. Like, it does not have to be perfect, okay? So if you have yet to type something in the chat box, go ahead and do that now for me, please. And I'm going to read off some of what I see. I asked you to define archetypes. So I have an example of something original. I really like that idea because what I think you're saying is that it is like a new version of something that's already happened, right? And I think that's a really good way to think about it. It exists and it comes up over and over and over again. For example, the archetype of the hero. And so when we go back to our Canvas page, we see archetypes of heroes. So we see Harry Potter as a hero. We see Luke Skywalker as a hero. We see Nemo. Oh, I keep calling him Nemo. It's Neo from The Matrix, okay? Frodo, and then the dad from Finding Nemo, right? All of these are heroes because they put themselves at risk in order to save someone else. They find out their true inner strength and then they overcome their obstacles. Like, yes, those are representations of heroes. So you all are absolutely correct. So when you say an example of something original, I get it. What you all really mean there is that it is kind of that character type. Okay, so if I could just recorrect it, it's a character type that comes up over and over again. Okay, so for those of you who may have been stuck with what it means, it's just the repetition of the same type. Okay, Jocelyn talked about something historical, and yes, we have those representations as well. We have the situations. So it might be a situational archetype. So not necessarily a character, but when we have war, or when we have homelessness, or when we have like a plague or something, maybe that we might see in a book, read in a book, or see on film, like those things have happened historically. And so, yes, they're recreated for us in our films. Evelyn, you're absolutely right. Yes, it is a character. And once again, it's that character that comes up. Beautiful. Absolutely. It is an example, okay, of that same type of character. So guess what, you guys? Give yourself a pat on the back, give yourself a high five, give yourself a snap. You know what an archetype is, okay? That's not the issue. So if that was your struggle, you didn't believe that you knew what an archetype actually was, you do. So give yourself a little piece of resolve with that. But here's the piece that may trip us up a little bit, because you all told me that some of us just didn't understand the prompt, or you didn't understand the assignment very well. The assignment asks you to talk about an archetype, but then show why it's important. Okay, so that's where things get a little complicated. And so let's go back to our class document that we created. Remember, you all had access to this for your test. And so what I want to remind you all to do is use the resources that we have. You, again, if I've never told you all this before, in this class, you won't be tested on your memory because my memory is trash. So I can't expect anybody else to be tested on his or her memory because my memory is about garbage and I have to write everything down or else I forget. But what you will be tested on is your ability to think critically and think deep into what we're discussing, okay? So that's the piece where things get a little tricky because we do have to step outside of ourselves and sometimes we have to put ourselves in a different perspective to think critically like we need to. And so when we think about what's important, right? The meaning behind these archetypes, look at this example here in Black. It said Princess Leia is a damsel in distress. Although she's the rebellion leader, the whole movie centers around her need to be saved. Although she's different than a normal princess, she's still a princess who needs a knight or prince to save her. This, like Rapunzel, Snow White, or Cinderella, who cannot overcome their struggles without being saved. So the real message then is that women are delicate flowers, right? Who need to be taken care of so much that they can't take care of themselves. And so that's like the underlying message that we get through that damsel in distress archetype, that repeated context that women are weak. That would be the hidden message through that archetype. Most of our heroes are men. You just saw it. I just showed it to you. We looked at this slideshow right here, right? This picture, all of these are male characters. So when we first think of hero, we do think of a male character. Why is that? Give me a chat box really quick. Why is it that when we consider a hero, do we only think of male characters? Let me put that in the chat. Try to answer that one for me. This is what I'm talking about when we're thinking a little bit deeper than what's on the surface, okay? I'm starting to get some responses in there. Go ahead and start putting them in there. I love what you all are thinking. Thank you, Anastasia. Right, you guys, what works best is if it's the first thing that comes off of your mind, right? So don't think too deep on it because I guarantee you your first instinct is likely on the right track. So go ahead and get that in there. Why is it that we consider male characters? I'm going to share with you some of what I have received. Because we saw male characters being the main superheroes growing up. Absolutely. It seems like now in the last 10 years or so, we're starting to see strong female leads, but definitely that was a societal shift. Society, our world decided, hey, enough is enough. We need to see strong women, okay? Because they tend to be more powerful and have more chances of getting attention from people. Absolutely. Think of like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, right? Like every character he plays a hero because he's big and strong physically. And then he also exudes like confidence and has a heart and is kind as well. So definitely that's something that we see. It is that, Melanie, you're right. It's shown in films more, but our job is to figure out why. Why does society keep showing us these strong male leads instead of the strong female leads? Tasia, you're correct because they come off as big. More powerful because we saw them and because they tend to be stronger. You guys are absolutely it. So when we think of the archetype as a hero, it is typically a male. When we think of the damsel in distress, it's typically a woman who needs saving. And so that is why we study archetype, because it's more than saying, oh, this character is the same as another character. It's about the representation and the hidden message. So I'll just put that in the chat, the hidden message, the underlying message. Okay. So I'd like for you to now. And I'd ask that you all send me a private chat because this will let me know your readiness to retake. So some of you are at this point, I think, are ready to retake the comp. Some of you are still going to work with me a little bit longer. So this is a private message to just Miss George. So some of us have been switching back and forth, whole group, small group. To Miss George, private message. If you needed to teach this lesson to someone else, what is the most important thing for you to share? So I'm going to put that question in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to, so the two things that we focused on last week were one, as the basic, Star Wars. We watched Star Wars Episode 4, which was the very first Star Wars film released. When we watched that, we focused on two elements. One, the archetypes, which we just reviewed, and that is, again, that character or situation. Character type, hero. Character type, villain, right? Hero is Luke Skywalker, villain, Darth Vader, right? Good guy, bad guy. That comes up all the time. Or a situation like, what do we have here? The endless supply of bad guys, right? Like that comes up. I put down Divergent because I'm sorry, I actually focused on the rebellion. So we have the rebellion that comes up. So we have the clearly the rebellion in Star Wars, but we have an example of the rebellion in Divergent. We have Katniss Everdeen from Hunger Games who leads a rebellion. This time, the rebellion was led by the Jedi, right? And Princess Leia specifically. So there's always kind of this rebellion against the bad guys. We also have the situation where we have a character. It's here in gold for you guys. Somebody added. We have a character who doesn't like his home anymore. He's like outgrown his home and he wants to get away. Like that comes up all the time in movies, right? It's like, oh, I've got to escape. My family is smothering me. I've got to get away and go see the real world. Like it's a reality as well. So when we think of an archetype, it again is a character or a situation. This slideshow was created by your classmates, and maybe some of you were in groups where these topics were discussed. So the purpose of that, again, is to give you more examples of what those things look like. But we also talked about historical context in Star Wars. And I gave you guys this link to the History Channel. I think it's going to play an ad. So if I could beat the ad, I will. Let's see if I could start my screen before the ad starts playing or find the ad to X out of it. Oh, okay, it's not coming up. Maybe I can talk. Okay, so I gave you guys this link and it was on Thursday's page as well that really talked about the historical significance or maybe where Star Wars showed real moments from history. Okay, and so what we want to focus on there are those moments from history that seem to be recreated in the film. For example, the dark side or the Empire wanted to take over, and they were willing to. There it is.
Make it so you can take it on any adventure, but only you can create the memories. We've made it the longest last.
Okay, so where we have the dark side who wanted to take over and they wanted to control. Well, the most significant or most recent event like that in history that we can think of is, of course, Nazi Germany. And that's why the History Channel put this example there for us. They connected or compared the empire from Star Wars with Nazi Germany, with the fact that Nazi Germany wanted to take over, with the fact that they had soldiers who were very dedicated, no matter how wrong their actions were. And they had a leader who they followed almost blindly, right? Like Adolf Hitler. Okay, so that would be a historical representation of the film. When we think of, they say Emperor Palpatine and Richard Nixon, because he was really evil, but seemed to be a nice guy. All right, he did wrong undercover. Nobody really knew what his wrongs were until it was brought to light. The same as Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars. So you all were given that link so that you could see more historical context in the film. So again, our last week was really all about putting together things that are familiar to us. If it's familiar, it's likely an archetype, or historically relevant, and that's the historical context. Okay? That's really what we focus on. But again, we take that one step further, 95, all right? We take it one step further and we say, what does it all mean? Why is this important? Why do I need to keep this in mind? What is it that I'm supposed to learn through that? Okay? And that's really what we covered all week. It's those lingering questions that we wanted to consider. What you might feel different about with English class and your other classes is that a lot of what we cover in English class is very much figurative. And it is not always direct. It's not always clear, like a math equation or a science formula. But what we do here is the critical thinking, and that's what we have to continue to practice, trying to see the underlined or the hidden message. The hidden message is not always right there in front of you. And so it's reading, a lot of reading between the lines, and a lot of trying to look deeply into the message to understand. Always listen to this. What is it the writer hopes that you take away from what they've created? What is it that we take away from the reminder that the empire is like Nazi Germany? What is it that we take away from the representation of Luke Skywalker as a hero who's been around before? Like, what's so familiar about that? Like, why do we look at archetypes? Okay, so it's just those questions that we have to keep asking ourselves over and over again to try to make sense of the world around us. Honestly, they're all just reminders about what's important to our world. Okay. The video will be posted for you guys. You all won't need to look at that video for homework tonight. And then we will schedule a makeup time for you all to take your competency. So you all have actually 2 homework assignments tonight. I don't want to say watch the video because it's a little lengthy right now and you'll be rushing. But I need you all to, again, make sure that you do. And then we'll probably use Wednesday, which is your off class day, as time. We'll individually set up ways for that you all to take your competency Wednesday. Okay, please give me a thumbs up if that makes sense to you. Thank you, Melody, for the visual thumbs up. That's the only one I see. Thank you, Antasia, Atlanta, Anastasia, Giovanna, Janhira, Jocelyn, beautiful, Evelyn, Alyssa, Ismael, Muhammad, Ayani, Jesus, Eunice, or Christian. Do you all understand when we will take our comp again?